Hello, fellow citizens, and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Elfie, just a girly pup trying to figure out this Star Citizen thing. And today, I'm going to be exploring the rest of Ruin Station and the parts that I missed last time I was there, as well as last landings and some of the terrain throughout Terminus. So, let's get into it. I started off the day by waking up on Ruin Station because I had actually logged out here, and so I was able to go back and explore some of the things that you guys said I missed in my last video. Now, the rooms on Ruin Station are pretty small, and they at least get the job done with the storage access, but they don't offer any free coffee or rations or anything. When I went down the elevator, I realized that I never actually saw the habitation area on my last adventure, so I knew that I was in a good area or a good place to actually find the things I didn't see before, like the medical clinic. I also saw this sign that said market, and I figured that this would be a good place to go because I didn't actually find many shops last time. The signs in this little alleyway said gear, equipment, noodles. I figured that this would be a good place to go. There's even some booze for sale. And walking into this little food court area, it was definitely nothing like I saw on Stanton, but it did look promising with a couple of different options for some snacks. I'm not exactly sure what a Cena is, but I had to try it. I also had to pick up some reclaimed water. I'm not really sure if it's toxic or not like it says, but we'll see. There was another stand offering some meat skewers and then also these other skewers, but I think that these are just the rats from the station. I also grabbed some room temperature beer from the noodle station. I really liked walking up to these different stalls rather than separated stores. I think it gave the station a different vibe than all of the places I had been in Stanton. I looked through this weapon shop, and I decided to do some shopping. I got a jacket, as well as this helmet. And then the next stall happened to be a full-blown clothing store. I tried on this sweater and absolutely loved it. It was very complimentary for the female character, and it would be great for fall. Of course I had to go buy it, along with another pair of boots. And next thing I came up on was the gear shop. And here I bought the full Morozov Aftershock set after debating of which one to get, as well as the Why Not helmet. Once I was done shopping around the market, I saw this graffiti saying Ghost Arena, and of course I had to go check it out. I didn't really know what to expect, but I was walking around checking out the place when all of a sudden I heard a bunch of gunshots, and so I ran out of there like a little bitch. After making it back upstairs, I wandered back to the hangar area and found the staircase that I had missed last time in Ruin Station. I also realized this is where all of the views are of the outside of the station. It's definitely not as pretty as some of the spaces in the space stations at Stanton, but it definitely is cool to look out into Pyro, which has a totally different vibe and look to it. And when I went back downstairs, I found someone had made a mess and left a bunch of stuff on the ground, like this Dengus root, and a bunch of other things that I totally picked up every last bit of. And then I went back to this homeless area that I had seen last time, but I totally didn't look in front of me, and there was a ramp right there. I don't really know what I was expecting, but when I turned into this tunnel, I actually ended up finding a box of stuff. And it was pretty decent considering the options that we have for food and drink here. Once I was done stealing from all the homeless people in Ruin Station, some friends hopped on and we decided to go into the Ghost Arena because our friend Vector actually knew his way around. And these uncontested zones are actually pretty cool. There's a bunch of different boxes where you can loot, and there was a reasonable amount of PvE. There were some dogs and humans, but it wasn't so overwhelming that you couldn't handle it. After some more shooting and looting, we were pretty good and ready to get out of there. I know that there's a lot more doors and a lot of places to explore in here and something about keycards, but I'm looking forward to exploring these uncontested areas more. And before leaving Ruin Station for our Pyro excursion, I bought the space motorcycle because I just couldn't help myself. To continue our journey exploring Terminus, we went to Last Landings. What stood out to me was that it was a little outpost set on a lake, which was actually really pretty. And it was very different from other places that I visited on other planets because there isn't really a spaceport. There's just these random little pads that you can land on. And when we got out of the ship, I realized there was this little area with a storage space and a little shop where you could buy a couple of different things like some cubes for food and some med pens as well. The other thing I noticed is that this planet is extremely cold, so you can't really be outside for too long. That really explains the bonfire in the center of the place. I decided to check out the shopping terminal and realized there was a ton of clothes. I got some pants, a shirt, a helmet with a mohawk, some beef chunks, a vest, another pyro-style shirt, and a mask. Once I was done shopping, I decided to explore the other parts of this area. There were a ton of NPCs walking around, which was kind of cool, and there were some buildings that were cycled so that you were protected from the cold, but then other ones like this where you weren't. It has a commodity shop and some other terminals like other cities, but I wouldn't really consider this a city. It's just kind of an outpost in the middle of nowhere. And because it's in the middle of nowhere, I don't really know what the actual purpose of these outposts is when you can just gas up at the space station, like Ruin Station. However, there were a lot of cool nooks and crannies to kind of explore, and there were some boxes of loot laying around in different places. I ended up getting this med gun with a skin, which I thought was pretty cool, and I don't know how rare some of these items are, so it might be worth checking out if you haven't been to an outpost before. Before we left, my friend wanted to show me something, and we ran into this room where there was kind of a cookout going on with a bunch of dogs on the grill. However, no one was manning it, so they're probably gonna burn. And I wish that they actually sold them, because I feel like this would be a really good spot for a little convenience stand, and it would add more to the story about the NPCs walking around. So my friend jumped down this hole, and I reluctantly followed, but it was kind of cool. It brought us to this little basement area where there were boxes throughout it to loot. Then there was this back room that we crawled to, which probably doesn't seem that important, but to me, this is one of the coolest parts of Star Citizen. There's so many different places in this game that you can go explore, and you find the highly detailed rooms like this that probably have no purpose, but it's just cool to see. I was also able to find more containers in the weirdest places. And they had all sorts of different foods that you don't actually find on space stations or anywhere else in the universe. And on our way back, I wanted to take a tour of the Starlancer because this was my first time in the ship. It's actually a very big ship and very functional. It had a pretty decent sized cargo room when you first walked into the ramp, as well as different storage areas. The bridge was very spacious with different remote turrets as well as the 2 captain seats. And the recreation area was also pretty dope. I really hope that at some point in the game, they add more functionality to these game tables like a pool table. Past the recreation room, there were a couple of bedrooms that were very functional. They had a bed, a desk, and some storage. But the coolest part to me was the bathroom. I might be a little klepto and I stole my friend's shampoo bottles. And by far the coolest thing in the game is this functional mirror. Kind of. I was a little headless. When I took my helmet off, it actually worked. This is so cool. I found the engineering room, which was really cool, and I'm so excited for this to be coming to the game. And after we were settled back in the Idris and said goodbye to our friend Vector, I decided to take my cutter down to the planet to explore the terrain a little bit more before we left to our next location. I found some deposits like this felsic deposit. And overall, the terrain was pretty barren with not too much to explore, and it was constantly stormy for the entire time I was trying to see down here. And after a difficult landing in the wind, I tried to get out and look at the sunset, but it was too cold for me to actually be out here, and the sunset was pretty disappointing. It was too foggy to actually see any colors in the sky like I've seen in other sunsets, and there was no forage or animals or anything for me to really explore that I found. I'm curious if this is going to continue to be a barren wasteland with really nothing to explore, or if the devs have more plans for Terminus. If you have any recommendations for my Exploring Pyro series, let me know in the comments. I want to know what your favorite spots are. And if you like videos like this where you can see Star Citizen from a new player's perspective, be sure to like and subscribe to support the channel. I post new videos twice a week, and I hope to see you next time. Until then, Elfie out.